On the plain of Dura, a colossal golden statue towered 9 stories high, and for every person in Babylon, it was a test.
By order of King Nebuchadnezzar, when you hear the music, fall down and worship the image of gold. Whoever does not bow will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace.
Then the horns sounded. Drums beat across the plain. Tens of thousands of nobles, governors, and magistrates dropped to their knees. A sea of silk and turbans flattened against the ground. One wrong move meant death by fire. But in the middle of the bowed empire, 3 young men stayed on their feet. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not move.
My king, 3 Hebrews have defied the decree. They refuse to bow.
A murmur spread through the crowd. The music stopped. Every eye turned to the 3 who had not fallen. Guards rushed forward, seizing them by the arms. The 3 were dragged through the stunned assembly toward the king's throne. Nebuchadnezzar sat on an elevated throne, his hand gripping the armrest. Fury burned in his eyes. The 3 young men stood before him, bound but unshaken. The king leaned forward, ready to speak.
Is it true that you 3 refuse to bow before my statue? That you do not serve my gods?
His voice was ice and iron, but the 3 young men did not tremble.
I will give you one more chance. When the music plays again, if you bow down and worship the image I have made, very well. But if you do not bow, you will be thrown at once into a blazing furnace. Then what god will be able to rescue you from my hand?
Somewhere behind them, the furnace was already blazing, the same furnace that would swallow anyone who defied the king. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego exchanged a quiet look. A silent understanding passed between them.
Well, what is your answer? Will you bow or will you burn?
The court held its breath. Every second stretched like a drawn bowstring.
The fire is real, but so is our God.
The king's fingers curled tighter around the throne. His patience had run out, but before he could speak again, Shadrach opened his mouth. The words that came next would shake the empire.
King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter.
The king's brow furrowed, but the young man kept speaking.
If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it.
Then came the line that made the guards flinch.
But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up.
Nebuchadnezzar's face changed. Fury turned his features to stone.
Heat the furnace 7 times more than usual. Bind them tighter and throw them in.
The order echoed across the plain. Soldiers rushed to stoke the flames into an inferno. The furnace roared hotter than it ever had, a blinding pit of death. But the 3 men did not look at the flames. Their eyes were fixed on something greater. The furnace raged with a heat never seen before, 7 times hotter than any smelting fire.
Your God won't save you now. Let's see you burn.
The soldiers wrapped the ropes around their wrists until the hemp bit into skin. Yet Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood as still as the statue that condemned them. The executioner's men grabbed them by the arms and dragged them toward the furnace door. The heat came in waves, so intense that the soldiers themselves had to shield their faces. But the 3 young men did not flinch. They walked as if led by an unseen hand. From his throne, the king watched every step. His lips curled in satisfaction. At the very mouth of the furnace, the executioner raised his hand for the final shove. The air screamed with fire, and the 3 men stood on the threshold of eternity. With a final shove, they sent the 3 young men into the blazing abyss.
Burn, you fools! Your God is nothing.
But the moment their bodies passed through the opening, A violent backdraft exploded outward. The flames leaped from the door like a living thing, wrapping around the soldiers. The executioner's skin blistered and blackened in an instant. He didn't even have time to scream. All the soldiers who had forced the three inside collapsed, their bodies smoking on the stone. A pillar of fire shot upward, roaring like a wounded beast.
So perish all who defy the king of Babylon.
But then, through the glare, Nebuchadnezzar noticed something that made him lean forward. A strange white light flickered inside the furnace, too pure, too bright for any earthly flame. The king squinted at the furnace, the strange light gnawing at his certainty.
Great king, the fire. It behaves strangely. Could there be something more?
Nonsense! It is merely the heat tricking your eyes. The men are ashes by now.
But the glow only intensified, pulsing with a steady, unearthly calm.
My king, the furnace itself killed our soldiers. Something is not right.
No god can withstand the flames of Babylon. Yet, what is that light?
Perhaps we should look closer, my king. The people are terrified.
He will not be made a fool by tricks of the light. But, very well, I will see for myself.
He rose from his throne, the golden statue behind him seeming to mock his hesitation. With every step, the supernatural glow grew brighter, yet the heat did not touch him. The king reached the furnace door. The roar of the flames was now a distant whisper beneath the pulsing white light. He leaned forward, his crown catching the glow. His breath caught in his throat. Through the blaze, he saw movement, not three bodies writhing in agony, but three figures walking upright.
They're alive. They're walking like it's nothing.
He blinked, squinting harder. Then he saw a fourth figure, taller and brighter than the rest.
4 men, unbound. The ropes are gone.
The king stumbled back, a shockwave passing through his entire body.
By all the gods, look inside the furnace.
The advisor leaned close, and his face drained of color. A light beyond this world filled the furnace, and the king knew, in that moment, that he was watching something that would shatter his empire's understanding of what was divine.
Did we not throw 3 men bound into the fire?
Yes, my king. 3 men, bound tightly.
Then why do I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the flames, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods?
Confusion and awe sent him stumbling forward, right up to the furnace door.
Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out of the fire.
Inside the furnace, the 3 young men turned their heads toward the sound. They began walking through the flames as if crossing a cool meadow. The 4th figure stayed back, his light shielding them, then fading slightly. At the edge of the furnace, a hand emerged through the wall of fire, unburned, steady. Every soul on the plain of Dura held its breath as the impossible walked toward them. And then, through the wall of flame, Shadrach stepped out onto the stone. His sandals did not even sizzle. Meshach and Abednego followed, their robes not even singed. The crowd erupted in gasps and cries.
Impossible! The fire kills my strongest soldiers, yet they walk out like from a cool garden.
The 3 young men stood calmly, the ropes that had bound them now ash at their feet.
They're untouched. Not even their clothes are scorched.
Where there should have been agony, there was only peace on their faces. The king's advisors rushed forward, but Nebuchadnezzar himself stood frozen, his scepter trembling. Behind them, the furnace still roared, but the 4th figure did not follow. Its light glowed silently within. The crowd pushed closer, straining to see with their own eyes what their minds could not accept. And for a long moment, the plain of Dura was silent, broken only by the distant crackle of flames that had obeyed a higher power. Then the king's advisors swarmed them, lifting their hands, touching their hair. They had to see for themselves.
Not a single hair is singed. Feel it. The fabric. It's not even warm. The threads are untouched.
One dignitary leaned closer, hesitating, then inhaled deeply near Shadrach's robe.
There's no smell of smoke, nothing. It's as if they were never in the fire.
King Nebuchadnezzar stared, the arrogance draining from his face. His crown felt heavier than ever.
How? How is this possible? Tell me, what did I see in there?
He stepped forward, his royal facade crumbling into wonder.
No god of mine has ever walked through flames for his servants. Your God is, beyond any I have known.
And in that moment, the king of Babylon understood. There was a power in the universe greater than his throne. Nebuchadnezzar drew a deep breath and raised his voice so that every ear on the plain could hear.
Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel to rescue his servants. Therefore I decree that any people or nation that speaks against this God will be torn limb from limb.
The herald's quill moved swiftly across the scroll, capturing the king's words for the empire. Inside the furnace, the fourth figure's light swelled one final time, then dissolved into a shower of golden sparks.
Your God has shown his power. I promote you, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to high honor in the province of Babylon.
A murmur of awe rippled through the crowd. The same statue that had demanded worship now stood in the shadow of a greater truth. The three young men bowed, not to the image of gold, but to the God who had walked with them in the fire. Messengers were dispatched to every corner of the empire, carrying the decree that a new God had been acknowledged in Babylon. And the furnace, now silent, still glowed faintly with the memory of a light that no earthly fire could explain. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego turned from the king and began walking across the plain.
Go in peace. Your God has made his name known this day.
They walked without hurry, the crowd parting silently as they passed. A beam of pure light broke through the clouds, falling on the path they had just taken. At the furnace door, a quiet figure laid an olive branch across the stone threshold. The green leaves rested where soldiers had perished, life where there had been only ash. The light lingered, as if heaven itself was placing a seal on the miracle that had unfolded. Far away, three small figures disappeared into the horizon, their faith now woven into the empire's story. And on the plain of Dura, only the wind whispered, carrying the story to the ages. In the weeks that followed, the king's decree was etched into stone and carried to every corner of the empire. A great clay tablet was set at the base of the golden statue, declaring the might of a god greater than gold. Scribes carved the image of 4 men in the furnace into the palace walls, so the miracle would never be forgotten. King Nebuchadnezzar, alone in his chambers, stared into the night. A single tear traced down his cheek.
What I saw, the eyes of that fourth figure. I will never be the same.
And as dawn broke over the plain, a white dove descended, settling on the cold furnace door. Some said it was a sign. Others said it was the same dove that Noah had released long ago. The 3 young men were never seen again by the empire, but their story echoed through the ages. The decree remained at the statue's feet, a permanent reminder that the God of Israel had entered Babylon, and the dove, having delivered its silent message, vanished into the golden horizon. 3 young men, armed only with faith, faced an empire's fury and walked out unburned. No one can explain how the furnace killed the executioners but left not a singed hair. The 4th man remains a mystery. Some say an angel, others the Son of God before his earthly birth. They lived out their days serving the God who saved them, even in exile. Their names are remembered not for defying a king, but for trusting a king who commands the flames. The furnace remains a monument to a question. What would you do if tested by fire? The golden statue still gleams at sunset, but never again will it bend the knees of the faithful. The stars came out over Dura, the plain silent, holding the miracle's secret. Some say in a pure flame you can still see the fourth figure, walking with the unyielding, and so the story fades. But the truth it carries burns brighter than any furnace. As the credits roll, the three men become distant figures on the plain, walking into a promise. The cold furnace stands silent, a monument to a moment when heaven touched earth. The light that once filled that kiln now lives in every heart that refuses to bow to lesser gods. Their unburned robes are a quiet reminder that faith is not the absence of fire, but the presence of a faithful God. And though empires rise and statues crumble, the God they trusted remains the same. In every generation there are furnaces, and in every furnace there is a fourth man. This story was not just for Babylon, it is for you. Whatever fire you face tonight, you do not face it alone. Stand, trust, the same God who walked with them walks with you, and the flames that terrify you will become the light that guides another home. But the furnace did not light without a fight. The crowd demanded blood. Nobles pointed, their robes still dusty from prostration, their faces twisted with rage. One man spat at the ground, cursing the Hebrews for daring to defy the empire. A child stared, wide-eyed, as the mob's fury grew. Voices rose, pushing the king toward a decision he could not unmake.
If I show weakness, the empire will fracture. They must die.
The king's jaw tightened. He would not be seen as merciful to traitors. The roar of the crowd sealed the fate of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so, with the masses howling for fire, the king gave the order. The furnace was stoked, and the empire watched as the three walked toward the flames. The executioner grabbed Shadrach by the tunic, pulling the ropes until they cut into his wrists.
Your God is a lie. Scream for mercy. He won't hear you in the fire.
Shadrach did not answer. Instead, he turned his head and met Meshach's eyes, a silent bond stronger than hemp. The furnace belched heat, and the crowd stumbled back, shielding their faces. But the three did not move. The executioner's men bound Meshach, then Abednego, knotting the ropes with savage glee. Yet even as the cords bit deeper, Abednego's hands were steady, not a tremor. The executioner shoved them forward. Their sandals scraped the stone as they neared the inferno. Even the strongest soldiers in the king's army felt their skin prickle from 50 feet away. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced the flames as if they were a cool morning breeze. At the threshold, the executioner raised his fist, poised to send them into the roaring death. The executioner's fist came down, and the three vanished into the white-hot mouth of the furnace. The soldiers at the door never had a chance. The flames reached out like a living beast and struck them dead. King Nebuchadnezzar watched the bodies crumple, and a cold smile crossed his lips. Justice, he thought.
Their God did not save them. No one defies me.
But then the words of Shadrach echoed in his mind. The God we serve is able to deliver us. A cold dread crept up his spine. The furnace raged, yet he felt no victory. Suddenly, the roar of the flames fell silent. The entire plain held still. It was as if the world itself was waiting for something to break through.
Open the door again. I must see what is inside.
With every step toward the furnace, the light grew brighter, not with fire, but with a presence that made the king's knees weak. And there, in the heart of the furnace, where the flames were white with fury, 4 men walked calmly. One was unlike anything mortal eyes had ever seen, a figure of pure white golden light, taller than the rest, with a face that shone like the sun.
So, this is what a promise looks like.
Not a trace of fear marked their features. They walked as if the inferno was a gentle path through a garden. The ropes that had bound them had turned to dust, but their eyes were fixed on the radiant being beside them. Through the opening, the king saw it all. His legs nearly gave way.
Look! I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the fire. They are not harmed. And the 4th. His appearance is like a son of the gods.
A collective gasp swept through the dignitaries. Some covered their mouths, others fell to their knees, and in that blinding moment, the king of Babylon understood that he was in the presence of something eternal.
Come out of the fire, you whom the Most High God has protected.
He calls us servants now. The God we serve has shown his hand.
The 3 exchanged a quiet glance, then moved as one toward the opening. They emerged untouched, their tunics white as snow against the furnace's hellish glow. Nebuchadnezzar stepped back, his crown tilting, his voice barely a whisper.
Touch his hair. Not a strand is curled by the heat.
Their robes, I saw them tied with rope. The rope is gone, but the cloth is unburned.
There's no smell of smoke. They could have walked out of a garden, not a furnace.
Inside the furnace, the 4th figure began to dissolve, his form becoming light, then nothing. The miracle was complete. The fire had spoken, and now it fell silent. The king turned to face the silent multitude, his voice carrying a weight it never had before.
Let it be known to every people, nation, and language. The God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is the Most High God. Any who speak against this God shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses turned to rubble.
The herald's quill flew across papyrus, capturing the decree that would travel to the edges of the empire. The king himself took the quill, inking the final sanction with his own hand.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you are now governors in the province of Babylon. Your God has done this.
For the first time that day, the crowd fell to their knees, not before an idol, but in awe of a decree honoring the living God. The 3 men, still in their unburned robes, bowed their heads in silent gratitude to the God who had walked with them. The golden giant on the plain gleamed in the setting sun, but its power had been broken by a flame that did not burn. And as the herald sealed the scroll, a single beam of light broke through the clouds, as if heaven itself was adding a signature. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked away from the plain, their steps light on the ancient stone. King Nebuchadnezzar watched them until they were specks on the horizon. A single tear traced through the dust on his cheek. The plain of Dura fell silent. The great statue still stood, but its shadow no longer held the empire. Night fell, and the furnace that had roared 7-fold was now a dark, cold mouth in the earth. But in its depths, a faint glow still trembled, a lingering echo of the one who had walked with them. The 3 men never returned to the plain, but their story would outlast the statue, the furnace, and the king himself. Generations would retell it. Scribes would carve it. Believers would cling to it when their own furnaces loomed. And to this day, no one knows for certain who the 4th man was, an angel, a vision or the Son of God before his earthly birth, but everyone who saw him that day knew he was not of this world. And so, the story rests in the silence of Dura, waiting for the next heart that dares to face the fire